Okay. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Turkish Diplomats present Charming Noise. We are the Turkish Diplomats, and we review horrible, bad, bottom-of-the-barrel movies so that you don't have to. And this season, season 3, is all about drive-in classics.
So
I forgot what I was going to say as I was saying it.
Like, were we supposed to say something?
Well, think of this as going to the drive-in, but you're not trying to smuggle your friends in your trunk.
Like the old Cheech and Chong skit.
Exactly.
Pedro and the Man go to the movies.
I've been smuggled in a trunk, but they keep forgetting me. Yeah.
So before we get started on the actual film, we do want to say thank you to everyone who tuned in to the live broadcast.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we apologize for the hiatus that we took. It's been a couple of weeks, but we had several tragedies hit us because life happens, and we thank you for your patience. Thank you to the oddly growing number of fans we have in Turkey. Geez, we're called the Turkish Diplomats. I wonder why that happened. All of our fans in Canada, we absolutely love you guys. And there will be a Bigfoot bonus at the end of this season as well.
That's right.
And for everybody else, including the French population that has seemed to have discovered us, thank you for joining in on the fun, because we're just three old fuckers who enjoy making fun of bad movies. And hopefully this season we will have a special guest from our season 1 movie review. We'll just let that hang there in the air.
All right. Right.
Like an old fart.
Like
Like an old man. Anyway.
So our film, our season this year, like I said, is drive-ins. Our film this time is one that Paul picked out, and it is called She-Demon.
Demons.
Demons.
Yeah, I kept getting that mixed up too. I had to look it up because I had written
it too
in my notes.
All right, so Paul, give us a rundown on this wonderful masterpiece.
Okay. I cannot wait. I have a stupid amount of trivia to go with this too. Okay, so it is a black and white film that was made by a guy named Richard I'm gonna say Cunha.
Yeah, that's good enough.
Amatata.
Nobody famous in it really, except for one person. We'll kind of explain him in a little bit. So it opens with
You're talking about Carl or Chris or whatever his name was, the character?
Sammy. Chris was
Sammy. Well,
yeah,
Carl
Chris
was
the older gentleman.
Semi-famous as well, if you looked up his pedigree on film.
I didn't find much on him, so I'll defer to you on him. Anyway, so it opens with, it's supposed to be like a TV broadcast. A hurricane is hitting. I think they're kind of implying that it's Florida, since I don't know of a hurricane that's ever hit California. Got enough shit going on there. So I think they're kind of inferring that it's in Florida. But anyway,
or Hawaii, because
or Hawaii, could be Hawaii. Absolutely.
Anyway, it's the entire Gilligan's Island plot at the beginning.
except they're all working for a television station. And on that boat is also a lovely lady named Jerry, who is the daughter of the station manager. And we know this because they give this weather report about this hurricane. They describe that the cameraman was injured by flying debris, shooting the thing. This is years before the Weather Channel, and I kind of, there's no way to catch it live, so the guy walks out with a big ass camera because this is 1960s. It's gonna hurt when he gets hit, So anyway, so they make a special appeal from the station manager that they're looking for these members of the staff, and especially the station manager's daughter, which is really the owner's daughter, which that seems to be the important one. Oh, and by the way, there's some other employees there too. So the next thing you know, there's an island. It's an uncharted island. Okay. Goes right along with the Gilligan's Island mythos, right? Probably some of the shots are used in some of the,
some of the stock footage and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And in fact, I looked it up. A whole lot of this movie was shot in Griffith Park, and they would just put up a few plants around to look more tropical for certain shots.
They use the same two boulders over and over.
They absolutely did. So they get on. They've got certain supplies with them on there, although their boat is gone and they're dry and look fine. Like her hair never messes up. So we have four people. I want to describe them. So there's Sammy. Now Sammy is probably the most famous person of the entire cast. He was previously he was the number 2 son, although he went by like several different names during the series run. But he was the number 2 son on the Charlie Chan movies.
Wow. Oh, wow. Okay.
5 Charlie Chan movies. And then he later played Hop Sing on Bonanza and was in over 100 episodes of that.
What? That was Hop Sing?
That was
Hop Sing.
Wow.
Hop Sing, younger with hair. Yeah.
Wow.
And so he, unfortunately, the worst, one of the most, there's some racism in this movie.
There is.
And it's mostly jokes at Sammy's expense, some of which he makes himself.
Sammy is
like this all looks like chop suey to me. That's not a good line.
Yeah, I mean, Sammy was the comedic minority character.
Yeah. And it was, he's and every once in a while, and he is actually probably the best actor of the group.
Oh, by far.
Of that group. Now, later we're going to meet the bad guy who may have been the best actor overall, but the guy that played him, I'm going blank on his name right now, Victor Sin Young. And he was a really interesting guy, actually. He ended up got a degree in animal husbandry, did a lot of work on that, and became an expert in Cantonese cooking, wrote a best-selling book in 1974, basically got away from acting because he couldn't find many acting jobs where he didn't have to play that kind of character. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately died in a natural gas accident at his home.
Oh my gosh!
Basically choked to death on gas.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, but he's still remembered at the university. There's he's been honored by different acting groups for all the work that he did, which is actually pretty impressive. Plus everything he did outside. This was pretty much his last movie. This is the theme of everybody in this movie, pretty much. In this movie, and their career pretty much came to a halt. So So then there's Fred, who's played by Todd Griffin, and Todd
Mhm.
Griffin is the hero of the thing. He's got the deep, commanding voice. He's dressed sort of like the professor, oddly enough, from
He is, yeah,
his
khakis,
shirt is never untucked, uh,
right?
and he's just a privileged son of a bitch and seems to take over everything, and everybody just lets him. And although and the guy that played him, Todd Griffin, after finishing this movie, he was pretty much out of the movie game. Done several, but this was pretty much it. And I think it was him, and I apologize. Oh yeah, just the year before, he made another B movie called She Devil. And it's a pretty similar movie, actually. Uh, but anyway, so I thought I'd point that out. So next is before we get to the girl, there's a guy named Chris, and I think this is the one you may know a little bit more about. I think his name is pronounced Openui. Openui.
Charlie
I
Openui.
didn't even look it up. Sorry. I only finished the movie 10 minutes ago, but 10 minutes before we started.
Yeah, Charlie Openui. He was uncredited in his short film career and just about everything but She
Yeah,
Demon.
I saw that.
But he was one of the Eskimos in The Thing from Another World, and he was in Tahitian Nights, where he was like a counselor or something. And Around the World in 80 Days, he was an uncredited extra who I believe was like down on the docks or something, and
Yeah.
uh, interacted with Phineas Fogg for a minute or two there.
I'll
Wow.
have to rewatch that just to find him. Um, yeah, he gets killed off pretty early in the movie, and
Which I got things to say about that death. But anyway,
I'd skipped ahead a little bit on that, but yeah, he dies pretty early. We'll talk about that. And then finally we have Jerry, spelled Jerrie, so you know.
All right.
Daughter of the station owner. She's kind of the spoiled rich girl whose character arc, unlike most people in movies, goes downward. Uh, she starts off, she's like the strongest character of the entire group. Like she's smart alecky and but pretty bright, and she can handle herself in situations well. And then they apparently decided at some point, oh, we're going to turn this into a love story, and we're going to make her fall for Fred, so she becomes this wilting little flower.
Yeah. Well, that was pretty typical of the
Yeah.
era and of this whole genre of low budget movies. I mean, they were stranded all in 2 days, and she suddenly had this romantic awakening, I guess you want to call it that. And
Yeah, it made no sense because the whole thing takes place in like 2 days, doesn't it?
yeah.
and let's not fool ourselves. This film has everything. It's got mad scientists, it's got Nazis, it's got gorgeous women.
We haven't
dancing
even gotten to
around.
Nazis.
It's got just so atomic bombs and spies and you name it. It's
Not only did it have Nazis, it had environmentally conscious Nazis because they were figuring out a way to use the Earth's natural heat as an unlimited power source, which is what Iceland does. That's what Iceland does now.
I gotta say, not very
Icelanders,
safety
damn
conscious
Nazis.
Do what, Paul?
Not very safety conscious Nazis. Which,
Well,
as a group, most Nazis, as I understand, were not terribly safety conscious anyway. So this is saying something, but they have the older fat Nazi
Yeah.
who is pretty prominent for a little bit in the
Yeah.
film, and
Mhm.
until he finally gets the shit knocked out of him. But
Yeah.
before that, he comes into the lab. There's a lab. There's an underground lab that they're going to locate a little bit later. And when he goes in there, no flashlight. Uh, and he uses the old-fashioned torch, an
Yes.
actual lit torch, which he is waving around chemicals everywhere. In fact, I thought he was going to burn Jerry's hair at one point because he literally gets I know I'm jumping ahead, but not very. Now,
Okay, so then let's back up and start. We're on the beach.
oh, one more thing, and then
Okay.
I'll get to the beach. Jerry was played by Irish McCalla, and she has a very famous part in the history of comic books being turned into movies because she was Sheena, Queen of the Jungle,
No
Oh,
way.
based on the original comic book series,
Yeah.
and was in several episodes. Did her own stunts until I think she broke her ankle, and they're like, "You're not doing your own stunts anymore." Otherwise, very athletic, very statuesque. I think they even had her measurements, and they were impressive.
they
They
had robot titties.
I think it was
Let's.
like 39.65 because nothing grows in the shade. The she So here's an interesting little thing. So I found out about how she became this accomplished because she did this movie and she's pretty much out of the movie game after this.
uh-huh.
But she was a self-taught artist, although she did go to one art school for a while. She was mostly a self-taught artist, had begun during her teenage years, and ended up doing posing for Vargas. Now, Vargas,
Wow.
yeah, so
Wow.
now Vargas is known as, I mean, he had a huge influence on comics also, but he was probably most known for artwork that he did for Playboy in the
Yes.
early years of Playboy, and was doing a lot of the cheesecake paintings that were in some of the girly magazines even from before that.
Hmm.
And she was really kind of bugging him about, hey, how do you do this? What are your techniques here? And she showed some of his artwork, and he was very impressed. And a guy that never shared his techniques apparently taught her a fair amount of his technique. And so she took that and she did mostly landscapes, particularly seascapes and Western motifs. And in fact, that's what she did basically the rest of her life. She's got artwork all over the well, really all over the United States, but especially in the Western United States. Some of her stuff is very collectible. It's in museums. It's still sold online, sold quite a bit.
Wow.
I think she did over 1,000 paintings uh,
Gee whiz.
lifetime that
Impressive.
were commercial, basically that were available
Yeah.
to be sold. Pretty fascinating person. I'm sorry. I know that I spent a lot of time on that, but I thought it was pretty
Yeah, I'm actually really glad you did because I wouldn't have known that was a hot thing. But
cool.
like we said, they're bombs because when they're on the island in clean, dry clothing for 5 minutes, and 4 U.S. jets fly over,
That's
and
right.
and
And
then Sammy,
signal them.
yeah, they try to signal these jets by jumping up and down and waving, "Hello, help us, we're down here." And Sammy overhears on the radio that some chatter with the pilots that, "Yep, we're clear to bomb." So
Bomb the volcano the next day.
yes, they bombed the volcano the next day.
And
So
they're
they
kind
had,
of clear on whether it will be conventional or atomic warheads.
yeah, they don't, yeah. My thought was atomic warheads just bombing like an atoll like they did so often.
He was kind of inferring that, but I think they must have figured out when they're writing this thing, hey, if we put an atomic bomb on this island, they'll be dead. You know, even if they're a couple of miles away in a boat, they'll probably still be dead. I think they were intentionally unclear on the kind of bombs that were to be used.
Yeah, and later on, at one point, the villain, Carl, says they've been bombed many times before, but we're safe underground here.
Right. Okay.
Was
So
it Carl or
Carl Osler,
okay?
who
Okay, yeah,
apparently played Nazis in a whole lot of movies and continued to play in movies for many years. He's one of the few people whose career did not come to a screeching halt at this point.
It just kind of came to a winding down at some point.
Yeah. So so they're on the beach. We've established that they're going to be bombed, so there's an imminent threat in the air.
Mm-hmm.
And they decide they're just going to go exploring. They wander off because, what have you got to lose at this point? You're going to be bombed to hell.
Mm-hmm.
And what was it? Did they hear drums or something?
They heard drums, and
they went to follow where it was coming from.
They decided they would wait till the
back.
next day because it was late in the day, and which you would think if you've still got daylight and you think you're the only folks on this island and it's going to be bombed the next day, maybe you want to find those people right away.
Yeah.
But they decided to wait till the next day.
And they come back to camp, and our boy is got two spears sticking out of his chest.
Chris is
dead, but breathing. He's still breathing, but he's dead. And do they get excited? Do they panic? Do they go, maybe we ought not find these people who are on this island because they're dangerous? No, they go, look, a trail of blood. Let's follow it. And the next shot, they're walking on a wet beach. The tide has just gone out, and they're following a trail of blood on a wet beach. It didn't wash away. What kind of fucking blood was this?
Sea demon blood.
Which we find out when they find the body.
The body is face down, and when they roll her over.
This is by the way, this was historically where the butterface was invented.
Yeah.
Because she was a lovely maiden laying down, and then they turn her over, and she has this ghastly, disfigured, bad makeup face.
Yes.
Paper mache or something.
With fangs. Don't forget the fangs.
Yeah, that are sort of, well, we'll say British looking.
I thought the same thing. Wasn't going to say nothing, but the truth hurts. The truth. The tooth hurts. Anyway,
that's good.
I can't help myself, and I'm sorry. But there's when they find the body and they roll the body over, who's been laying face down, the knife is suddenly in her heart, sticking out of her by like 8 inches of blade, straight up. And how that happened, like, where did that knife come from? Because she could have been laying down flat with that.
Yeah, it must have hit a battle rib.
Got wedged in a bone.
And here's what gets me. Fred, who I got Scooby-Doo vibes from him. It's like all he needed was an ascot, but he insisted on walking around with his shirt off, and he's constantly sucking in his stomach.
He really was. He was pulling.
He was trying to be a macho. And he was failing badly because he would deliver his lines and then he would inhale quickly to try to suck in that gut.
Well, I did that.
I remember everyone smoking back then, and so it's harder to get that breath in.
Oh, yeah. And
go ahead, Tom. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, so they hear the drums again and they follow them to a campground. And I just see the timer here and it says we've got like 8 minutes left. Have we really gone that quickly?
If we,
Oh,
yeah, I think I spent too much time on the. I'll tell you what. If it doesn't, we'll jump to we'll see if we can get right back on again.
yeah,
Oh, okay, okay.
yeah.
I'll just cut it in.
So
Sorry, folks, we get distracted easily. We're like squirrels. And
Nuts.
so they're observing these women doing a kind of a tribal hoochie coochie go-go dance around a campfire.
And let me say, my favorite part of the movie.
Oh yeah. Oh,
it was
yeah.
the only really entertaining part of the movie. I mean, and these girls that were doing it, where they were just stunning.
They
and
were.
then like I guess the main girl who does the little solo dance there for a minute, you know, while she stares into the camera the whole time. I was like, I'm gonna need to take a walk after this. Holy crap! It was great, but the dance, the tribal dance, had nothing to do with the plot.
They have
Nothing.
a lot more important things to do than practice their dance number.
Well, you know, she demon and all. And then out of nowhere, Nazis come charging out of the woods.
Okay, this is okay. I gotta steal this amount of time real quick. I'm a nerd. We're all nerds here. During a game of the role-playing game Call of Cthulhu many years ago, our friend Dave Bennett, I won't go into the details of the game, but our heroes are just about doomed on a freighter during World War II, when suddenly a Nazi submarine surfaces and Dave shouts, "It's the Nazis! We're saved!" and
God.
And when the Nazis appeared in this movie, I literally shouted that.
Oh my God. Oh, I am going to back us up just for a quick moment, Tom.
Okay.
When they found the woman on the beach, Jerry actually says she's young, or she says something like she's young and beautiful, but has the face of a demon. And Fred says, "Demon, she demon." And then they start saying "she demon" after that.
Yes.
And later, after they meet up with the Nazis, they use the term "she demon," and they're amused by, "Oh yeah, that's not a bad name."
Well, you know, some things just catch, and this is for our listeners. Paul is very, very influential in our lexicon of language in this small group that we've got. He couldn't think of the phrase one time when telling a story of, you know, you've got those interstates where they're highways, but they're also the local road, and there are crossroads that go across them. And you can turn around there and go down a couple of miles to the next road. And you guys know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Paul could not think of the name of that, so he called it the get across.
Which
We use it to this day.
Yeah.
It's the get across.
a better name, just like record stick.
Like,
and the remote controls for every device I have are called Mr. Thingy. They're
And it's
still
not
called
the-
Mr. Thingy.
it's
Anyway.
not the hem of a shirt, it's the shirt edge.
We digress. One of the things early in the movie when they're following the tracks of this, you know, it looks like a human footprint except it has a claw on one of the toes. So, you know, they're trying to explore the island, and Sammy finds something on the ground. And it's something.
I love this part.
Yeah, he's like, it says something in Latin, and there's a skull and crossbones. And hey, Fred, what do you think of this? And Fred looks at it and he goes, I'm not really sure. And Sammy goes, it looks really familiar. I'm not sure what it is. And then Fred goes, it's yours. Oh, that's my fraternity pin.
I never go anywhere without it. But here's what got me about that whole thing. It's a fraternity pin of skull and crossbones. One of them, yeah, it's one of the most, nefarious fraternities in the history of universal colleges and everything.
So it's him and the Bush family.
Yeah,
Yeah.
everybody, all those guys.
Magnets. Yeah. Oh,
You got a conspiracy theory about hidden cabals, skull and crossbones.
Yeah, skull and bones, and yeah.
And here our boys, he's part of it and stranded on an island with she demons and Nazis.
But yeah, okay, we got a couple minutes left on this run.
I was going to mention going back to our fabulous dancers. A couple of them are playing drums, right?
Yeah.
But there's also a whole brass big band that you can hear, which we don't see. But apparently, everyone these dancers are so good you can imagine it. And and they're dancing to the band. And by the way, the name of the dance group was called the Diane Nellis Dancers.
Wow.
Now, I looked everywhere for information, and I finally found just little bits and pieces on her. Apparently, she worked for Desilu Studios at one point. That was Desi Arnaz's and Lucille Ball's group that made I Love Lucy. And she had developed, apparently, this dance group. She had danced at one time at the Moulin Rouge. I don't know which one of them was her. I think it was that main girl who was laid out, although I can never find a picture of her. I also found out that the director, apparently, he didn't hire separate people. Because they were kind of doing this on the run. They agreed to put on this crazy makeup to become the she demons later on in the movie. So it's the same girls.
Yeah.
Which I thought was pretty impressive for them.
Yeah. Okay. Nice. I mean, you get a pedigree with Desilu Studios. That's a big thing, honestly.
But she kind of disappears off the map pretty much. She got married.
They all do. Everybody does.
And if for the listeners that have no idea of the importance of Lucille Ball and Desilu Studios, if you are a Star Trek fan, you can thank her. She is the admiral of Lucille Ball is the admiral of Star Trek.
She saved Star Trek. She really did. She really pushed it.
And then about 10 minutes later.
Thank you for that brief intermission while we figured out what was going on. We just ran out of time. That's simple. Yeah. The mind is a terrible thing.
Awful. I'm getting rid of mine.
So when we last left our intrepid voyagers, I'm trying to keep it going here. They had just found the Nazis and the go-go she-demons prancing in the jungle that was filled with palm leaves and pine trees.
Yeah.
And I want to back up a little bit. They were sheltering for a short time because they were going to sleep, and then they were going to go search for the drums that they kept hearing.
Mm-hmm.
And they were in the cave. They were in this cave, just the two of them, the girl Jerry and Fred. And I'll give them credit for this. Whoever did this, excellent work. There was an echo in the cave.
I did not notice that.
Oh.
Yeah, I noticed that. Sometimes, though, it was strange. The echo started before they started speaking. It
That's
was
how
subtle.
bright those reflections are on that, man.
Yeah. So,
I
so
didn't
we're
even
on an
notice that.
island
I've got a
where,
good sound system here. Oh, I'm sorry, Tom. What?
oh no, so I'm just going to say, so we're on an island where the laws of physics don't always apply.
The caves anticipate your conversation.
Man, if
And
I
Oh
could have a
no!
guitar pedal that actually played music before I even started to play.
I just wanted to make that note because there's some weird things that go on with caves, which we're going to get to in a moment.
Yeah.
But the Nazis come in and they disrupt the go-go dancing she-devils or she-demons, and they capture them and they whisk them off to their secret base, a cave. And
And
they,
by the way, they're not she demons yet. The girls don't become she demons until they get
well,
treated by this.
till Fred mentions that they're she-demons, but
Yeah,
he's already
because
mentioned it.
because like when they first find the girls in their captivity, they're the beautiful women, and then suddenly, the shot changes and they're talking. You see Fred or Jerry talking, and the next thing you know, when the shot goes back, you see the girls in the cages. They're now the she demons.
Oh,
They're,
that's true.
and there's no explanation as to how they changed all of a sudden. But the Nazis take a bullwhip to this one woman who was like the leader of the revolt or whatever, who escaped. Whereupon they also went into the jungle and played drums and danced, where the Nazis could never find them that way, I guess.
Right.
But
Because Nazis got no rhythm.
Nazis can't jump.
Nazis got no rhythm. Nazis got no rhythm.
So yeah, they bullwhip this girl, and they later find out she's dead from the bullwhipping.
And to find out by unattaching her from like the rack she's on and just dropping her ass face down in the sand, I don't think she was prepared for this, but she handled it like a champ.
She did. She did.
And Fred decides, let's sneak into the Nazi cave and see what they've got going on.
Which then there's a quick switch of scene to deep inside the Nazi cave where there's a laboratory.
Yes.
And one of
A
the
laboratory downstairs.
yes, that's important. Downstairs in the cave, and there's lab with all kinds of glass instrumentation and stuff going on, and there's a lady sitting in a chair, and she's got her face wrapped up, and that's when we meet Osler.
Mm-hmm, yes.
Osler is the Colonel Carl Osler is the evil doctor. He's kind of a Mengele character.
Yeah, yeah.
And he's trying to apparently do something for his wife's face, which they don't really go into a lot of detail at that point.
Right.
Then something has happened, and her face is. And in fact, one of the fat Nazi comes running down there, and
with the flame.
With the flame, and he's
in a perfectly well lit underground laboratory, sneaking around. They're sneaking around in this well lit laboratory, hiding in nooks and crannies, and he cannot find them with his flame.
There's not a lot of butane on this island. That's what it comes down to. So he's just got to keep his torch with him all the time. She's horrified that somebody's going to see her, and she, and even though she's wrapped up, anyway, they have one of these girls, the dancing girls, on the slab, if you will, and he's doing something, and I never could figure out exactly what he's doing, but it involves a needle.
They talk about later when Osler is explaining what they're doing is they're transferring blood back and forth, transporting the genes, the character genes from the women to his wife in an effort to restore her beauty. Because we find out at some point that she was a lab assistant and her face got blown up
Good.
blown up real good,
Real good.
by the exhaust from their geothermal uh, heating power system,
Volcano system.
volcano system. And so yeah, so they're trying to restore her. And during Osler really actually had a pretty good role there. And he was also smoking a big fat doink when you walk in there, he's just finished rolling this thing up. It's like a 6-inch long joint.
Probably laced with meth, being a Nazi and all.
That's right. Filthy Nazi meth heads.
So
Yeah, they're stealing the essence, basically,
Yes.
of these women, which convert them to these prehistoric beings that have hideous faces and bulgy eyes and British teeth, big clay necklaces around their necks so that you can't see where the mask ends and the woman begins.
and otherwise completely unchanged.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And oddly enough, once they transfer or steal her essence and put it into the wife, they lock them up in these cages outside made out of bamboo, and they slowly revert back to their normal selves, but
Right. Takes a few
conveniently
days.
have no memory of who they are.
Yeah. But they remember the dance moves, so good on them.
So,
They got the-
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was like, they got the music in them, and it just stayed.
So it gets a little. We have one of the first of several. Hey, wait a minute. That doesn't make any sense. Kind of moments. Now, remember, Fred had come into the cave, and he made Sammy and Jerry stay behind. Right? He's being brave, and she's impressed by it. But then the next time you see them, they're all together.
Yes.
Apparently, they just followed right behind him.
And there's this one touching moment in there while they're in the underground, the sub-basement of the laboratory in the cave, where they start pontificating about the fate of themselves and the world and all this other stuff. And she walks over in the cave basement laboratory to a window and stares out of it into the jungle.
I did find another review that brought up that same question, Tom. Like, why is there a window on the outside if they've gone downstairs and crawled deeper into a cave system?
And later they use that window to watch the bombing start.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's part of the same science that they later run it. Now, I'm trying to remember. I think they had the fight with the fat Nazi before they met Karl Osler.
They did, yeah.
And so they're like hiding in the darkness. And thank God that in that still mostly well-lit laboratory, the guy comes down with the flame, but apparently he can only see what's around his torch. And Jerry she just can't stay still because she knocks over a glass and this I don't know what you call that particular
beaker. It's a beaker.
Thank you, a beaker.
Well, it's not a cylindrical beaker. It's
it's
the
the
pyramid-shaped beaker.
Yeah.
Anyway, a glass, and so it rolls across the floor. And he thinks that's weird, and he kind of looks around, and he goes, shit just falls off in this cave. And then she knocks some chemical to the floor. Now he knows something's up, and he's talking to her, and she's back to being her kind of, smart alecky, defiant self, and is really challenging him, and it's pissing him off. And Sammy and Fred are just
Fred.
looking at each other like, oh, she's handling it pretty well. We're just gonna
Yeah, they're not doing a thing. She
They're like,
goes, hey,
don't you need to attack the fucking Nazi? And so they waited until he's about to clock her with this thing, and then finally Fred goes into action and fight, fight, fight. They eventually, I'm trying to remember. I think they finally get him on the floor somehow, and he
yeah.
Well, when the fat Nazi punched him, and I was impressed by this,
oh yeah,
he knocked him across the room
and
over
the
a table.
He did.
I mean, it was like WWE SmackDown.
If you watch, the fat Nazi's fist connected with Fred.
I think that's why Todd Griffin got out of the movie industry. His jaw was dislocated after that, and they probably had to use a double for the rest of the movie because it sure looked like he got knocked the F out in that.
Yeah. Well, there's parts we're skipping, I'm sure, because they're just parts that we just keep wanting to talk about.
But they skip stuff.
Yeah, they did.
Because whatever goes on, they finally they defeat Fat Nazi, and then all of a sudden they're in the laboratory with Carl.
Yeah.
They don't explain that. But they're like,
Maybe they tried. They did escape the cave. They run into the jungle, and they run into a Nazi patrol guard guy.
That's true. Yeah.
And then they take him back, and that's when they meet Osler. They cut from that to Osler's.
But they're all sort of like relaxed around the laboratory, like, okay, we're going to start the camera, and everybody just get in your place, good, and go. And then they go into.
And Osler's smoking his joint, and they're all just kind of happy and relaxed. But yeah, during that chase scene after they escaped, there's this one moment where there's a Nazi up on a cliff, and they've gotten the fat Nazi's pistol.
Oh, yeah.
And I'll give it to Fred. Not only can he kind of take a punch, he's a damn good shot because that guy was like a mile and a half up there on that cliff, and Fred just took casual aim like that dude from Sweden in the Olympics, and bam, you see blood splatter all out from this dude's face.
Yeah, he shot him in the face from a half mile away with a mouth
he covers his face with his hands just before he falls. Sort of Raggedy Andy off that cliff.
and then the two Nazis
rock on the way down.
The two Nazis who capture them, because apparently Fred had only one bullet. But I don't know if y'all have noticed this, but I thought about it and I had to look. They're Polynesian Nazis.
He kills another Nazi, and these guys are shooting Mausers, by the way.
And he has
they're a little bit more accurate than that pistol.
I mean, granted, a Luger was a good pistol, but come on,
So anyway, so then they have this conversation with Fred. We're going to run out of time again. They're having a conversation with Fred, and Fred's explaining why they're there, that they've been sent by the other Nazis. And I don't think they ever tried to tell them, oh, did you know the war's over, by the way?
Yeah.
Oh, they didn't really say that. And I'm thinking that might have been a good time to point out, it's over.
It's like when they would find those Japanese soldiers in the Philippines who thought the war was still going on in the 70s.
And so he's explaining how, he's been working on it, and it's like 15 minutes of scientific gobbledygook because he that there's like, and there is heat radiation, but it's not like gamma waves coming out of lava. But somehow, he's learned to take that radiation and he could direct it and get rid of scar tissue.
Yes.
That's the big important thing. And yeah, it kills the person, but we're going to work on that part.
And one of the Nazi guards had a scar, had a huge scar across his face. And I remember thinking, you can't have bad guy Nazis without scars.
There was actually a law in Germany at the time.
I
If you were going to play a
understand
bad
that.
guy, you had to get scarred.
You know, and then there's the point. There's when Osler brings Jerry into his office, makes her wear one of his wife's black dresses, and he tries to seduce her and tries to get her to drink this wine and stuff. And he's like, "Well, if you're not gonna drink, I guess I'll have to drink alone." You know, and he lays it on really thick about how beautiful she is, and he would give her the whole island and this, that, and the other if she would just sleep with him, basically. And
He's
she
trying
clocks
hard
him
to
in,
Epstein her.
and then she clocks him in the head with the champagne bottle
Heck yeah.
and escapes. And when she's running up the stairs away from the laboratory, she broke a heel.
Oh,
I don't, yeah, I don't think that was scripted because you see her just kick off both. She takes that shoe off, and the look on her face is like, fuck. But she goes with it, and she just kicks off both shoes and keeps going. I don't think that part was planned because the look on her face was perfect.
Well, later they're running up mountains,
Yes,
you know,
because they get,
and she's doing okay.
yeah.
She has no heels on anymore.
And then at some point during his attempt to seduce her, Carl's wife, Mona,
Yeah.
is peering through a curtain and overhears the whole thing. And then she, and so whenever Jerry runs out into the jungle, Mona runs into her, gives her the keys to the cage where her friends are. And then Jerry says, "I have to go back and get my old clothes. I can't run in this." So the next time we see Jerry, she's wearing the clothes she was wearing when they were shipwrecked.
So they basically they snuck back into the Nazi cave where they're looking for the escaped prisoners. She's able to change clothes and sneak back out to the cave tunnel system where they got lost.
Now, Mona also told her where the rowboat was.
Yes, Mona did. You're right.
Because apparently that's how they're going to get away from the maybe atomic bombs. And anyway, she gets out, she gets them. Oh, by the way, I remember how the fat Nazi dies because they're like struggling at the cage, and he gets knocked back into the cage,
and the she-demons grab him
into the she-demon pit, and they proceed to just gnaw
ravage him.
Did you guys notice that even though Fred's clothes were dirty, his shirt was still tucked in? And after the bull whipping he got from the fat Nazi, his shirt was still intact. But there was some Nazi standing off laughing whose shirt was in fucking tatters. I'm like, was this guy like fat Nazi's practice dummy or something? Because he's laughing maniacally, he's smoking a cigarette, and his shirt is just ripped to shreds. And they don't explain that one at all.
It's there. I think it's fair to say there were some continuity issues in this particular movie.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, all right. So
my dog is throwing up in my room. Give me a moment, guys.
Oh, sure. I do have a couple of quotes from Sammy.
Yeah.
Comic relief. Because they did give him some good lines.
They did.
As cheesy as they could be.
Yeah.
He says one of them is, "Let's ditch this crazy gopher tunnel."
And when well, you probably noticed this too. I might be stealing your line, and I'm sorry, but I wrote this in my notes. When they first hear the drums, he says maybe it's some kids who are on that rock and roll kick.
Yeah.
And they talk about how it's just a fad and it'll go away.
Well, it was 58 when this was there. A lot of folks that were just beyond teenage years.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Oh,
oh,
that rabbit
another
hole.
Sammy quote, "Let's blow this crazy fire trap."
Yes. Yes. Yes.
That's one of the last things he said. So they escape. There is a collapse in the tunnel system. Sammy gets pinned. You think they're just going to let him die at one
At
point,
the moment you think they are.
and but they did get him loose, and he kind of slows them down a little bit, but they managed to escape and get to I think the rowboat, and then somehow they avoided. Uh,
When
Well,
when they're on the top of the cliff looking down at the rowboat, there are some really racist things that were said.
oh yeah,
Well, there's the rowboat. And she's like, well, don't count your fortune cookies before they're baked.
I wouldn't bet your fortune cookies on that. Yeah, it was. Every joke is that if I wish Sammy had just reared back and pushed them off the cliff at that. He says, you guys are, what the hell with you, you know. The Air Force shows up the next day because of all the explosions and everything, because of everything that's going on, and he's like, yeah, there were some other folks, but they fell off the cliff. Uh, but yeah, he's convinced. What does he say? Like, oh well, they'll have to come back because of
The volcano that was.
yeah, the volcano went off, so they'll be all over the place. And I'm like, oh, yeah, but they were going to blow up the island anyway. So
Yeah, but I think what he was trying to say was that they weren't expecting it to be an active volcano.
yeah,
It's like the whole fleet will be here by tomorrow. So, like, I guess they're going to show up and study it. I don't know.
I think he was a little overly hopeful.
And when Sammy goes down, he's like, I'm going down to the boat. And it ends with them, with Jerry and Fred just awkwardly holding each other and her confessing her love to him again. Because after they were there on the island 36 hours and she's in love with him.
Well, after all, look at all that he has done for her.
Yeah, that's kind of what she says. Just you've shown me how to be humble, and I've never said I'm sorry. And
Oh yeah, he changes her as a human being according to her.
yes,
6 hours.
yes,
Her blood type has changed. And she's no longer a narcissist, and it just all this other stuff. I've just been so selfish my entire life, and it's like, wait a minute, you know what, girl?
Yeah, let her get back into Miami with a couple of martinis. She'll change.
yeah,
I hope so. I'm hoping she ends up with Sammy.
yeah.
Oh,
Oh,
he can do more than Fred does, and he's funny.
Yeah.
Tom's mentioning martinis when the fat Nazi is trying to ask her how she got on the island. She goes, "I swooshed in on a dry martini."
Oh yeah. What is this swooshing?
What this swoosh?
And then she said, "Well, I just kind of came in by over the water." And he goes, "Oh, and I've heard of these dry martinis. I didn't know the Americans still used those." Like he thought they were like a boat or something.
He was yeah. I can see why they sent them off. Yeah, you know what, guys? Why don't you go to this island and look for stuff and put on any charts, and we'll come get you when the war's over. Okay, are you ready? By the way, for a trivia question, which is only important to us.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. While looking through some of the stuff on this, I realized a connection to our past.
Oh.
It involves he who shall not be named. Tom slowly turns and looks at them. So this movie, we have seen parts of it before. And we saw it in a compilation, which was made by the Firesign Theater, called Hot Shorts.
Wow.
And Yes, it begins with
The
the
fine
greatest
line
line in
between
motion. Alcana, a small aluminum mining town on the thin dotted line between Mexico and Israel. For the Mounties are brave, and the Braves are mounted and on display in front of the general store.
By the way, if you can find this fireside theater short anywhere, ladies and
It's
gentlemen,
on YouTube. I've watched it.
Yeah, it is on
Yeah.
YouTube. Conan
Go-
O'Brien
go.
talked about it because he was talking with somebody who worked with the guy. I think the guy from uh, Better Call Saul and
Uh,
I can't think of his name, but the guy who plays Saul and Saul Goodman, Jimmy McGillis, it did some work with Firesign Theater, and I think they mentioned that this video of movies things at the
wow.
at the time.
'Cause,
So
I mean, that's where we watched J-Men Forever. Uh,
this was one of the movies in that collection.
wow.
I know. I think it was like at the end of it, but I don't know. I'd have to.
Uh-huh. Jeez, holy crap! Now go back and watch it.
And everyone else who's listening that has no idea and doesn't know us. So 40 years ago, we found this. Almost 40 years ago, the one who shall not be named had to start coming to visit us once a month, and because of something that happened that I was present for, but had nothing to do with.
Well, I was there for the initial part of it, so
But
I can tell this without mentioning him. He came to visit for a weekend from
yes.
up north Arkansas, and I had just gotten off work, and he's like, "Hey, let's go do some drinking." I said, "Not on an empty stomach. I'm gonna have to go grocery shopping." So I went to go get frozen pizza. He tagged along. He picked up a pack of cigarettes, and while we're talking, he did like everybody who smokes does. He starts packing the cigarettes,
Well,
thumping it.
now here's the thing. Here's the thing, Tom.
And
He was also putting a couple of things in his pocket while he was doing this.
no, he wasn't. No,
Yes,
I was there,
yes.
Paul. He was not. He put the cigarette. He opened the cigarettes. He opened the cigarettes and he started smoking it.
He started smoking the cigarettes, and he put the cigarettes in his pocket.
Yeah.
Yes.
And some clerk saw him and then turned him in. So then he had to do.
As he was walking, he had gone through that. He did not pay for them for sure.
Yeah.
He didn't pay for them.
So anyway, so he had to start coming every month. So when he would
pick
come,
up trash on the side of the road,
we would we'd rent movies or whatever, and one of these movies was this thing called Hot Shorts from the comedy group Firesign Theater. Had not seen it before, had no idea what it was, and basically it was sort of like riff tracks and what's the thing they did before riff tracks? That's
Mystery Science Theater.
Yeah, Mystery Science Theater 3000, and it was kind of like that. So where they're doing the voices, but you don't see anybody else. They're just dubbing voices.
Yes.
In edited movies, and they put 4 movies into it, and we were a little imbibed. And
imbibed is a good word.
It took us, I am not kidding, an hour to get through the first 40 or 50 seconds of the first movie. Because we would hit literally the hardest I've ever laughed in my entire life. We would just hear Alcana, and we were gone.
And this is before I moved back up with you guys. I had to hear about this secondhand.
Yeah, I think this was like 2 months later you moved, a month or 2 later you moved in.
Yeah, I moved.
I remember just laying on the floor holding my sides, and I was so sore the next day. It was, oh my God, it was so funny. And then we're trying to explain it to Tom, and we start laughing when he comes in, and he's like, "What the hell are you guys doing?"
Here's the situation. Here's a visual for you because we got my little time left, and Hell, you're already listening to us on all of your favorite platforms, so just humor the old guys. They're trying to explain it to me. We know Calvin is on his way from Batesville.
Yeah.
It's summer or springtime. The windows are open, and there's another gentleman who had an incident with the president of the United States at that time.
Oh yeah.
And we're not going to name him either. And there's a knock at the door. In true fashion, we fucking around said, "Who is it?" Like imitating a Cheech and Chong or something. I don't know what we were doing. And Calvin yells, "I'm not going to tell you till you let me in." At which point Calvin hears, "It's the fuzz."
No.
No.
Yeah, correct.
Correct.
No, these are you're combining two separate incidents here. The first was when I showed up.
Yeah.
The one with the fuzz, I had gone back to Batesville to get some stuff from my mom's house. And I get to the house, and my friend Ben Johnson is with me, helping me move. And the front door that we never used was the easiest to get my stuff in, because otherwise we had to go on through the kitchen. And I hear Paul, I hear, and I'm like, oh, whatever. I pound on the door.
I'll bleep his name because
Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry. And Paul and he who shall not be named. I hammer on the door and I shout, "Let me in! It's the fuzz! Open up! It's the fuzz!" And it sounds like someone put a cat in a sack with a bunch of monkeys, running and screaming and hollering in the house as they try to get rid of substances.
that would be me.
then at some point, Paul stops and says,
Hey, they wouldn't call themselves the Fuzz. And I hear that laugh, but about 50 times. I mean, and I'm like, oh shit, it's not. It's Calvin. And so Calvin comes in. We're all having a good laugh, including he who shall not be named, until he realized that when I'm telling him I just flushed all his product down the toilet, and he finally understood I wasn't kidding.
But you had to tell him like 6 times.
Yeah. And finally he's like, no, you got to get the wheat. I'm like, no, you don't understand. It's gone. I thought the fuzz was here. And he was pretty mad.
Oh my God. I have to say, a friend of my son's who went to high school with him is one of what I call one of my fringe kids, because they were always hanging out with Connor and stuff. He watched our live show this year.
Yeah.
And he said it was funny, but the best part was, honest to God, he says, listening to 3 old friends talk about good times and things like that. He goes, it was warm and comforting. Yeah, he said it was warm and comforting.
That's what we've always aimed for, non-threatening. Okay, we literally have less than a minute left.
Okay, sorry.
Do you guys recommend the movie?
Warm and comforting.
I don't recommend this movie.
No,
I don't.
Really?
Yeah,
I think
it's honestly, unless you just want to hear Asian racist comments, bad Nazi accents.
The dance sequence, though.
Well, okay. The dance sequence is not worth watching the whole movie for.
That's true. Okay, so 3 no's on that movie.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Yes. Affirmative.
There are fun parts to watch, but yeah,
there are.
Not worth the whole thing.
But yeah, I mean, there are fun parts to watch because you have to stop and think, what the fuck? Did they just say that, or did they just do that?
Tom, any parting comments?
Go check us out on our website.
Good grief, the boys ran out of time again. So this is what you can do. Subscribe to our podcast. Check out our YouTube channel. Go to our website. Turkish Diplomats present Charming Noise.